One, two. Ja, eller vill du ha en entré? Jag gör en entré, ja det är roligare. Okay, can everyone hear from this microphone? Yeah? Yes. Okay, great. I'll do it in English. We're going to do this talk in English. Welcome everyone to Fika, our third Fika talk. Very happy that you came. How many here are not Swedish? Or any? Oh, good, great. How many here are not? How many here are born in Israel? Okay, it's pretty good. Pretty good. So this time, this speak is quite. For me, it's quite. It's a subject that I think touches me a lot, and I think a lot of us expats can maybe feel some connection to this subject. That coming to Israel is as a dream and fill up your spiritual needs and the expectations you have from Israel. At some point, maybe also, it's not enough. You have to find something else here that gives you a meaning or meaningfulness day-to-day life, and that's why I think it's very nice to have these three people here. That for me, at least, I don't know. I think they will agree. Have not only succeeded with their Aliyah to Israel, but also succeeded to make a living or making something that they enjoy the day-to-day life, except just being Zionists. Well, it's people that I admire, and I'm very happy that you could come. So let's do an introduction. Josef Elias from Rannarna, and Miriam Alster from Ramadan, Fika-Talks, and Jonathan Conricus from Kvarsava. And thank you, Avner, a lot for coming here.
Hello, good evening.
Avner will introduce himself, a very known, successful journalist. I'm very proud that you came and will do this for us.
Very happy to be here.
And, enjoy. I hope it will be interesting for all of us.
Okay, hi everyone. So this one will probably pass along a little bit. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's very nice to be here in Fika, and I'm not Swedish and I don't speak Swedish. But I did learn two words so far. I learned skål, which I think is an important word, maybe the most important one. And then today I learned what fika is. And I have to say I like the idea. Combining skål and fika with Michael's pastries. I think that's the way to go in life in general. My name is Avner. I'm a journalist, an Israeli journalist. I'm not an expat, but I am married to an expat. So I know a little bit about the hardships, the challenges of immigration, of moving to a different place, in a different country, with a different language and different culture. And today we're going to talk about an immigration that is considered aliyah, meaning going a step up. And we'll try to figure out how much of it is really a step up, and when do you feel a little bit not so sure about the step up, and how do you deal with that? We have three guests today. So you were already introduced. So I would like to start by asking you three to tell us a little bit about yourselves. When did you come to Israel? And what propelled you to make that move? And maybe a couple of words of where you were in life when you decided to make that change. What was the position in your personal life when you decided to make Aliyah? So we'll start with you, Joseph.
Okay.
You should talk really into it.
Okay, do you hear me? Excellent. So, no? Närmare? Så hörs det bättre? Ja, det är bra. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So I've made Aliyah on a number of occasions. First time was when I was 18. I came to Israel, spent a year in a kibbutz. Then I made Aliyah again, did my second degree in Israel. Then I returned to Israel after working for a couple of years in Sweden around 2000. And I think my final Aliyah was when my oldest son joined the army 8 years ago. Then I think I became a real Israeli.
And what does your son do in the military?
Well, now he's a Meduimnik.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, lovely, isn't it?
So you all went with your son. You followed
yeah,
him.
yeah.
And that position of time, you were...
No, we lived in Israel since 2000. I meant that my son, when he decided to become a soldier, which was an obvious route for him, I felt that I was even more Israeli than before because of the move that, suddenly you have a son in the army. That's really, for me, it was a huge change.
Okay, so you're here about 24 years, an Israeli,
Yeah.
an official Israeli. Excellent. Miriam, tell us a little bit about your Aliyah history.
Can you hear me? So I have to start with I told my mom a few days ago that I was speaking at Fika, that I'm going to be speaking at Fika about how I succeeded in making Aliyah, and there will be 2 other speakers here. And you can't hear me in the back?
Hålla den närmare munnen bara.
It's like in my mouth now. Hello? So I told my mom I was going to speak at Fika with 2 others, that I was invited to talk about how it was to make Aliyah and how I succeeded in that. And there will be 2 other speakers, Jonas, Elias, and Jonathan Conricus. And what she told me was not, wow, כאילו איזה כבוד, how fun that they invited you, and it's a big respect. She told me, wow, ska du träffa Jonathan? Which is like, wow, you're going to meet Jonathan, so I need pictures of us here to send to her later. But yeah, my name is Miriam. I'm 42. I live with my partner Eldar, who's taking pictures. Our 2 daughters in Givatayim, and I work as a photojournalist. I've been working as a photojournalist here since 2008 at an agency called Flash 90. It's Israel's largest photo agency. I came for 4 months. That was the initial period. It was as part of an internship. As part of the photojournalism program, you need to do an internship for a year. So you can either do it in Sweden, or if you want, you can apply, do it wherever you want. And I decided to come here for 2 reasons. One, I'd been here a few months earlier to visit a few Swedish friends who came here as sort of an exodus. Like there was a Tiftufim, I don't know, like a few Swedes that came. I came to visit them. I had the best time. So I thought combine internship, making it into like a long vacation. And the second reason was love for photography. And that's what brought me to Israel. Not necessarily love for Israel, but love for what I was doing. So I applied to the big agencies, Associated Press, AP, Reuters. I wrote them emails. They never got back to me. I didn't want to be a nudnik and send another email. And I realized that the friends that had come here earlier, they did programs with the Jewish agency. So the Jewish agency actually helped me find a place at Flash 90. I came initially for 4 months. 4 months became another 4 months, and at the end of my first year, I decided I want to stay. I can go into gambling business, I'll work at a cafe, I need to stay in Israel, this is my place. And I was fortunate enough to to be hired at that point because there was a photographer leaving the agency. So that left a spot open for me, and I took that spot. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So, shalom. It's actually quite easy. I didn't have a choice. I was 13 years old. My parents made a decision. My sister is here with me, her husband, and of course my beloved wife. And at the time I was 13 years old, 1992. They decided, I think they said that they had an adventurous urge that hadn't been satisfied yet, and that they had a villa and a Volvo in Sweden, but they wanted more. They wanted to experience life, and they wanted the challenge. So we left Malmo in 1992, and it was an interesting period to come, and I speak about it in interviews because the contrast to today is so strong, because then we were thinking, dreaming, and talking about making peace with the Palestinians. It was after the Madrid meetings, but then...
We're still dreaming, some of us, but...
Yeah, many of us, I'm sure we still do. Maybe not all Israelis, but many of us definitely dream about it. And it was such a different experience then, 1992, to come to Israel. I remember my father, who was a photographer for Sydsvenskan, many years, and then Kvällsposten, and then he was also independent. Actually, not Kvällsposten, he was independent, but Sydsvenskan many years. And we hired a car from Eastern Jerusalem with Arab plates, drove down to horribly hot Jericho in the middle of the summer in order to be there for Yasser Arafat when he first came to Jericho as part of the implementation of the Jericho and Gaza First deal of the Oslo Accords. And I think about the difference between where we are today, where we were then, what we were thinking then. I'm sure I was much more naive and young and didn't know anything about the realities of the Middle East and life. Now I have a little bit more knowledge, and after 24 years in the military, I'm sure that changes perspective. But for me, coming here was, I think, a welcome change. And looking back, or maybe we will speak about that later, but looking back, tremendously happy that my parents made that decision and that we came to Israel. I am married and we are blessed with 4 kids. We are, of course, living happily in Israel. And even though we've lived abroad as a part of an assignment I had overseas, for us, we just spoke about it on the way, no doubt about where our home is and where we need to be and where the best place on earth for us to be is, and that's Israel. Maybe my perspective is a little bit different because I'm the son of an Israeli mother and a Swedish father. So from the beginning, Israel was always an alternative, and it wasn't, a very big move for us to make that move and come to Israel.
Okay, very nice. So what I want to ask you guys now is, most of us have, do you hear me good with this one? We have perceptions of countries we haven't lived in by either stuff we read in newspapers or maybe when we visited them as tourists. But usually it's not the same, right? When you move to a country, even for a few years, it's different than just visiting it as a tourist. So what I want to ask you guys, each one of you, what were the things you weren't prepared for? What caught you off guard in Israel? What are you still surprised by and maybe a little befuddled by sometimes? What still confuses you?
I'll give you some time to answer the question. So when I came, I finished the 6th grade in Sweden, and I came to Kita Chet in Israel. And I didn't really know Hebrew, even though my mother's Israeli. But I knew the alphabet and a little bit more, but I didn't really speak the language. So my first thing that really amazed me and actually frightened me was sitting in an Israeli classroom, not understanding a word they were saying. But my first 2 weeks, I thought that something was wrong and that something terrible had happened. because they were screaming all the time. And I couldn't understand.
He's saying Israelis are loud? How dare you?
Yeah, and this was, by the way, a kibbutz school. It wasn't, so they were allegedly supposed to be less. But anyhow, that for me was really a difference. And I think that looking back, learning the language was easy, but adapting to culture and adjusting from polite, social distance, very restrained and restricted Swedish behavior to the very direct, sometimes coarse, but very direct and honest behavior of Israelis. Took me many years, and I think that what really happened, and I think it also relates to your story about your son going to the military. What really, I think, made the change was military service, where for the first time I saw other Israelis and had real interaction with kids from Ashdod and Beersheba and Kiryat Shmona and people from kibbutzim and people from everywhere else, and that was the real eye-opener for me as a kid.
So just to follow up on that particular subject, when you go, I imagine you visit Sweden from time to time. Do you become Israeli there? Do you give chapchot to people? Do you hug everybody? Do you curse? Do you shout? Or do you take it back to the reserved, restricted behavior?
Yeah, I think we are all chameleons in that sense. People who have backgrounds from different cultures. I think, at least I adjust myself to the culture where I am, and I usually also, I find myself doing it when I'm speaking with people from different cultures, and I adjust my behavior. I was just in Scandinavia 2 weeks ago, just after the Eurovision, and I think I felt much more Israeli than Swedish. I also felt that, I was concerned that people would notice and people would identify me, and there would be issues. There were only a few such instances in Malmo. But in general, it was, I felt much more Israeli than Swedish. But I think it's a great gift to have that cultural awareness and to be able to adapt yourself to others. And I've used it a lot in interviews and in my work, that Swedish way of dealing with people and, keeping your cool, which we Israelis perhaps may not be the best at. But Swedes usually are very good at that.
Miriam, same question.
I think what's been a major, it's been hard for me here is that I am very Swedish. I am quiet. I am introverted. I keep my opinions to myself. I avoid conflict. And what I see as a conflict can be what Israelis see as just two different opinions in disagreement. And this just straightforwardness that you were talking about, this ruthless honesty, if I can add but just, I'm not used to it. And what I've learned is not to take everything personally. That it's just, it's more of who the other person is, and it's not necessarily an attack towards me. Because you can feel attacked.
You remember instances when you were here for a short while that you felt like somebody is not attacking, but maybe is in your space too much, is demanding too much of you?
There's occasions all the time where I feel like they can enter where they're not necessarily invited. It's small occasion. I can't think of anything now. I remember in one of my first times that I was living here, and I'd gone back to Sweden for vacation, and I came back, and at the airport, and you have to give them the passport, the woman looked at my passport, then looked at me, and she goes, "Your hair looks much better in the picture." And I was thinking to myself, why, I didn't ask you this. Why do you need to? You were not asked. And they, yeah, these are hard times.
Nobody would do that in Sweden, right?
No. No. Um,
Did you tell her something? Did you answer?
I think I was just in shock.
You're still in shock. Okay. Joseph, what's astonished you?
I still remember the question of just locals. So there are two things which really still amazes me. One is the level of informality, which becomes even more informal every year, which is very different from Sweden. And the second thing, which is still something which astonishes me, is that everybody knows everybody. It's the level of social network here is mind-boggling. Even after spending 15 years in Sweden in the business sector, you know 5 people. Here, after 2 weeks, you know everybody. It's a different ballgame.
Even if you don't know them, they know you.
Exactly.
So to follow up on that, do you see that? I know you're into business, high tech, basically, into entrepreneurship. Never get this word. So do you find this as a pro or a con? Is that a good thing? Is that a good sell for Israel? You come here, people will know you in a split of a second, and you will know everybody? Or is this something you're like, I wish it was a little different?
So I think the level of informality and the fact that people are very easy to get hold of is something which is a strength in Israel to a certain level. I think the difference between Sweden and Israel is that Israel creates many small businesses and they grow to a certain level, but they have a huge difficulty to create big organizations because the level of formality and the chance that people will start something new with some friends from the work will not happen in Sweden. So you don't have huge corporations here, which is the difference between Sweden.
And do you find that it helps you as a businessman sometimes? I'm looking to hear a little bit about how it works behind the scene. Are you using networks, personal relationships better now as an Israeli?
Well, I think you have to create a network in Israel because it is indeed a society where you have to know people who will open doors for you, and it's something you have to work on. For me, I was blessed because I'm working with 2 partners who are kind of Israeli, so they're my natives who are opening my doors, and now I'm opening them as well. But it is a challenge because people know each other from the army, from school, and that's something which is difficult to catch up if you come after you're 13, right? That's a challenge.
Miriam, you spoke about somewhat of an unpleasant experience. Can you talk a little bit about the pros? What would you say is as a pro in Israel for you as an expat that you wouldn't give up on today? And also as a journalist.
As a journalist, I mean, this is the center of, this is a conflict zone. As a journalist, this is a playground for journalists. And I lived in Jerusalem for a few years, which is especially, you have the Christians, the Muslims, the secular, all in 10 minutes away from each other. So that's the magic of this place, I think. The complexity of the society, which creates strong images, or strong articles, strong stories. So yeah, that's something that I wouldn't give up. That's why I'm here also.
Jonathan, do you think that Israel is, you're not into journalism per se, but you're into Hasbara? Do you think that Israel is a more interesting country and therefore is a better place to live? Because many Israelis think it's too interesting for me. I need a place to cool down a little bit. So I wonder how it looks from the other side.
Yeah, there's the old Chinese curse that may you live in interesting times. Israel is very interesting. It's very dynamic. It is not still. It's I think, a tremendously interesting story, and you can look at Israel from so many perspectives. And there's still a lot to read into a story, any way you turn Israel. A lot, sadly, is focused on the conflict, and we get a lot of attention for the conflict. I think it's quite unique, and I have looked into this and I've tried to research and understand what is the outstanding, amazing drawing power of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and why is it still so interesting 75 or 100 years after it started, depending on how you count. And there's no comparison. And I don't have any really good answers as to why it is so interesting. I think journalists like being here because, as you said, there's an interesting story, there's a human landscape, there's suffering, there's success, there's progress, there's tremendous backwardness, and then there's the tension between winners and losers in different aspects. And then there's the Tel Aviv beach and great restaurants and quality of life, and journalists can do the war correspondent thing during the day and then have drinks on the Tel Aviv beach at sunset, and then do the same thing tomorrow. And that gives a lot of room for a story to be told again and again and again. In my mind, what I think is, to follow up on the question, what I definitely wouldn't give up on is the authenticity and the social bonds and the true, in most senses, brothership or brotherhood between people. It's, I think, unique, the level of closeness and the willingness of complete strangers to help other strangers, whether they know them or not, whether they look like them or not. But
you still feel it's strong as ever, and stronger maybe than in your homeland country, because some Israelis complain that Israel has lost some of it, the solidarity. Do you feel it's still as strong?
I mean, my perspective is perhaps limited, but I think that it is, in comparison to other countries, extremely strong, and is probably one of our strongest traits or characteristics as a country, as a nation, as a people, and I think it is one of the things that sets us apart from others. Sometimes people, take the more steps than wanted and give what Americans called unsolicited advice, a lot of that. But I think the real genuine feelings and care for people, for others, is tremendously special. And I think we, of course, need to maintain that and make sure that it continues to stay that way. And in terms of the Israeli story, I wish that, the story would be about the tremendous success that Israel is, our economy, our high-tech, our engineering, our ingenuity, our agriculture, or many other things, our music, our art, our painting, whatever, and not just about the conflict. But I think that for the foreseeable future, for our generation and the next one, I think sadly the story is still going to be about that.